Look in your medicine cabinet right now. That bottle of probiotics you paid $47 for. 60 capsules. Maybe 10 billion live cultures on the label. Maybe. Half of them are dead before you swallow them. The other half never make it past your stomach acid, and the company that sold them to you knows it. Meanwhile, in a kitchen in Holmes County, Ohio, an 83-year-old woman named Edna Beiler is pulling a $2 mason jar out of her cellar that contains more living, active probiotic cultures than that entire bottle. By a factor of 10, maybe more. Researchers studying the Amish populations of the Midwest have documented gut microbiome diversity in plain community children that is measurably richer than anything found in suburban American kids. And the children of Holmes County have some of the lowest rates of asthma and allergic disease ever recorded in this country. Johns Hopkins researchers have spent decades trying to understand why. The answer sits in Edna's cellar, in a jar, ready in 7 days. And by the end of this video, you will know exactly what is in it, exactly how it lives, and exactly why your grandmother almost certainly made something just like it before the supermarket convinced her she didn't need to anymore. Stay with me. The last reveal is something I have never seen mentioned on any wellness channel in this country, and it came from a single conversation in a farmhouse outside Berlin, Ohio, on a Tuesday afternoon in early autumn. I want to tell you how I ended up in that farmhouse. 3 years ago, my wife Carol started having stomach trouble that no doctor could name. Bloating, cramping, a kind of exhaustion that settled into her bones. Our family physician put her on a proton pump inhibitor, then a second medication for the side effects of the first, then a third for the side effects of the second. By the 8th month, she was taking 5 pills a day and felt worse than when she started. A friend of mine, a retired dairy inspector who had spent 40 years driving routes through plain country, told me one evening over coffee that he had never once met an Amish woman over 70 with the symptoms my wife was describing. Not once. He said it like a man stating the weather. He gave me a name and a county and a phone number at a phone shanty at the end of a lane. That is how I met Edna. And that is how I found the jar. The first thing she did was laugh at the supplement bottle I brought with me. She held it up to the kerosene light in her kitchen and turned it slowly, reading the label out loud in her quiet Pennsylvania Dutch accent. 10 billion cultures, 3 strains, refrigerate after opening. She set it down on the oilcloth and said, very softly, that her mother had fed 7 children out of 1 crock in the cellar and never once bought a pill in 89 years of life. Then she took me down the cellar stairs. What I saw on those wooden shelves changed everything I thought I knew about gut health. Now here's the part nobody tells you about probiotic capsules. The pharmaceutical industry and the supplement industry that grew up beside it in the 1980s sold America a story. The story said that beneficial bacteria are fragile, scientific, complicated, and best delivered in a sealed capsule manufactured under laboratory conditions. The story said that traditional fermented foods were unreliable, possibly dangerous, and certainly not as effective as a scientifically formulated supplement. The story was extremely profitable. The American probiotic supplement market is now worth over $9 billion a year. The story is also, by every measure that actually matters, false. A traditional, lacto-fermented vegetable in a properly sealed jar produces, in the natural course of 7 to 14 days at room temperature, somewhere between 100 billion and 10 trillion colony-forming units per serving. That is not a typo. That is documented in food science literature going back to the 1950s and confirmed by every independent laboratory that has ever bothered to test a real fermented vegetable against a commercial probiotic capsule. The jar wins. Every time. By orders of magnitude. But the jar cannot be patented. The jar cannot be branded. The jar cannot be sold for $47 in a glossy bottle with a hologram on the lid. So the jar disappeared from American kitchens. Except in Plain Country, where it never left. Edna's mother, and her mother before her, and 4 generations behind that one, made the same ferment in the same kind of crock, with the same kind of cabbage, and the same kind of salt drawn from the same kind of well. Some Lancaster and Holmes County families trace their starter cultures, and the wooden tamping tools that go with them, back to the original Swiss and Alsatian migrations of the 1730s. 300 years of unbroken bacterial lineage. You cannot buy that on Amazon. But here's where it gets interesting, because what Edna pulled out of her cellar that afternoon was not just sauerkraut. Let me walk you through how the ferment lives in her kitchen, because seeing it makes the science make sense. On her counter sits a wide-mouthed, half-gallon mason jar, the kind that costs about $2 at any hardware store in America. Beside it, a head of green cabbage, dense and heavy, the outer leaves still attached. A small bowl of coarse salt, the kind without anti-caking agents. A few cloves of garlic, a handful of caraway seed, a single grape leaf, fresh from the arbor by the porch. She shreds the cabbage by hand on a wooden board, the way her mother showed her 75 years ago. The shredded cabbage goes into a large ceramic bowl. Salt goes over it, roughly a tablespoon and a half for every 2 pounds of cabbage, though Edna does not measure. She works the salt into the leaves with her hands until the cabbage softens and water rises out of it. This takes about 10 minutes. Her hands are 83 years old and they know exactly when the cabbage is ready. Into the jar goes the cabbage, packed down hard with a wooden tamper that belonged to her grandmother. The brine that was drawn out by the salt rises up over the top. The garlic and caraway tuck in along the sides. The grape leaf goes on top, weighted with a small clean stone to keep every shred of cabbage submerged below the liquid. The lid sits finger tight, not sealed, so the gases of fermentation can escape. The jar goes into a corner of the kitchen, away from direct sun, at room temperature. By the second day, faint bubbles appear along the glass. By the 4th day, the brine turns cloudy and the smell sharpens. By the 7th day, the cabbage has gone from bright green to a soft golden color, and the taste has turned bright, sour, alive. That is when she moves the jar to the cellar, where the cool temperature slows the fermentation and the cultures stabilize. That jar, on day 7, contains a population of Lactobacillus plantarum, Lactobacillus brevis, and Leuconostoc mesenteroides that no capsule on Earth can match. 3 live, native strains, working together in their own broth, with the prebiotic fiber they evolved to feed on, in the exact ratios traditional Pennsylvania Dutch practice has refined over 3 centuries. A 2 tablespoon serving of this, about what fits on the side of a dinner plate, delivers more living, viable, gut-active bacteria than the entire bottle of capsules in your medicine cabinet. But here is what nobody told you, and this is the part that took me 3 visits to Edna's farm to fully understand. The capsule cannot give you what the jar gives you, even if the bacterial counts were equal, because the jar contains something the capsule never can. The jar contains the brine. The brine is where the magic actually happens. The liquid that rises out of the cabbage during fermentation is saturated with the metabolic byproducts of the bacteria themselves: short-chain fatty acids, organic acids, peptides, enzymes, and a class of compounds called postbiotics that researchers have only begun to seriously study in the last 15 years. Postbiotics are what beneficial bacteria produce while they are alive, and they appear to be responsible for a significant portion of the actual health benefit attributed to probiotics in the first place. You cannot put postbiotics in a capsule. They degrade, they oxidize, they lose function within hours of being separated from the living culture that produced them. The Amish drink the brine, a small glass, maybe 2 ounces, taken first thing in the morning before breakfast. Edna has done this every day of her adult life. So did her mother, who lived to 94 with no chronic medications. So did her grandmother, who buried 2 husbands and outlived both by decades. When Carol started taking 2 tablespoons of the kraut and a small swallow of the brine each morning, the change came slowly at first. By the 3rd week, she had stopped one of her medications. By the 2nd month, 2 more. By the 6th month, she was off all 5 and sleeping through the night for the first time in 2 years. Her doctor, to his credit, asked what she had changed. She told him about the jar. He wrote it down. He did not laugh. Now here is the secret I promised you at the start. The thing I have never seen mentioned on any wellness channel in this country. When Edna sat me down at her kitchen table on that Tuesday afternoon and told me her mother's one rule for the jar, I almost missed it. She said it in passing while pouring coffee. The rule was this: after the 7th day, when the kraut moves to the cellar, you save back 2 tablespoons of the brine in a small separate jar. That brine becomes the starter for the next batch. You add it to the salted cabbage at the very beginning. It cuts the fermentation time nearly in half. It carries the strongest, most established cultures from the previous batch directly into the new one. And it is how a single starter lineage stays alive across 100 years and 4 generations of women. This is what your grandmother almost certainly knew. This is what was taken from her by the canned goods aisle and the supplement bottle and the doctor who told her fermented food was old-fashioned. This is what one community in this country never let go of. You can start your own lineage this week. A $2 jar, a head of cabbage, a spoonful of salt, 7 days of patience, and then a small swallow each morning that delivers what no pharmacy in America can sell you. Carol keeps her jar on the kitchen counter now, the same way Edna's mother did. When our granddaughter comes to visit, she gets a tiny taste on the tip of a spoon and wrinkles her nose and asks for more. That is 4 generations of bacteria in our kitchen, in Pennsylvania, doing what they were meant to do. You are not buying a supplement. You are recovering a practice your great-grandmother knew by heart. You are joining the small, growing number of Americans who have decided that the women who came before us were not ignorant. They were carrying something we are only now smart enough to want back. I want you to do one thing for me before you close this video. In the comments below, tell me about your own grandmother. What did she keep in her cellar, or her pantry, or the back of your refrigerator that nobody in your family makes anymore? Tell me her name. Tell me her state. I read every single one of these, and I am building a map of what we have lost. And if this video gave you back something you did not know was missing, subscribe and stay with us. Next week, I am going to Lancaster County to sit with a 91-year-old midwife named Mary Stoltzfus, who has delivered over 400 babies in her lifetime, and who keeps a single dried herb above her stove that she says has stopped more fevers than any medicine she has ever seen. You are not going to want to miss what she pulls down from that shelf.